Hi, welcome back to Shark Tank Tips. I'm your host, Zoe Hewitt. As always, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at RealZoeHewitt. First product into the tank, let's talk Ash and Anvil. If you are looking for them online, they've actually changed their name since the episode aired. I know it just aired 2 days ago, but they are actually Ash and Erie now, as in Erie, Pennsylvania. Now, I do have a theory about that. It's because this episode is actually from last season. If you pay attention during the show, you'll notice the sets are different, and they even reference the earlier season products. So, kind of funny, but here we go. So, Eric and Steven, first up into the tank, they were asking for $120,000 for their company in exchange for 12.5%. I love that half. And this is basically a shirt for short people. It sounds pretty blunt, but that's how these guys were. They said that the average man in this country is really 5'8" or less, and so these shirts are geared towards men who are 5'5". Well, 5'5" is their sweet spot, but up to 5'8", because otherwise shirts are just too long. Now, when they came into the tank, it was kind of funny. They took a big risk. They had 2 guys in front of them who were tall, and they started talking from behind the guys before saying, "Hey, don't think you can see us, sharks." So then the guys moved, here were our shorties. Now, I hate to say it, but if they say it, I can too. So it was a big risk. The sharks were definitely looking a little bit put off by that, but I think they did bring them around. But what was really interesting here is that Daymond said this is a problem he never even knew he had. So a couple of the sharks cut to being 5'8". Robert and Daymond both got up. They wanted to measure themselves next to Eric and Steven, as if they didn't believe that 5'8" was their real height. But they got up. Daymond thought it wasn't really a problem he had. He couldn't figure out why he'd never thought of it before. But these guys did get a couple of offers. They wound up going with the deal for Mark, who was really gung-ho this time around. We've seen it in more recent episodes, more recent seasons of Shark Tanks, where the sharks are starting to say, "Hey, I'm going to give you an offer. You have yes or no, this is it." That's what happened. Mark actually offered $150,000, but he wanted a higher percentage, 25%. Kevin also made an offer. The guys did pause, but they got lucky. They did go with Mark, and Mark even said, "Hey, you're lucky I like you." So it's interesting. What was also really interesting is how these guys met. They met in a nonprofit organization that brings together recent college grads with startups that are in emerging cities that need help. So these guys are based in Detroit, which is actually where my family lives. I was just there a couple of weeks ago, so extra fun for me to hear that. But it's just really interesting that that's how they came together. Now, for a Shark Tank tip, I think it was a big risk coming in behind those other guys. Anytime you do something that's a little bit different from the norm, you're taking a risk. We've definitely seen it pay off before. It paid off here. The sharks liked Eric and Steven a lot, but that doesn't always happen. We've also seen it where they're a little put off, and I think it's that likability factor, something we talk a lot about on this show, that you can get away with a lot more if you actually have that, whatever it is that makes the sharks like you. We even talked about that last week when we discussed Benji Lock. So if you haven't seen that Shark Tank tip show yet, make sure you go back and watch it. But it was something that he was able to get away with crying on the show because the sharks liked him. Doesn't always work out that way. So these guys did get a deal for their shirts. They retail for $79. Their margins are about 55%, so really good. And the big thing here also that the sharks asked about was, do you guys really want to be called short? And I think that's an interesting point. I was surprised actually that the sharks didn't harp on that a little bit more. And the guy said, hey, the women have a petite section, men have big and tall, but there's nothing for us more sort of average sized guys. And while I think that's true, it's a far cry to call a woman petite than to actually say she's short. Not to mention, just in terms of a big stereotype, let's face it, guys just don't want to be short. It's not a great thing to say. So in my opinion, they need a little bit of a better way to smooth that over instead of just calling guys short. But they said, hey, we don't want to beat around the bush. So what do you think? Do you think it's okay to call guys short? Would you wear these shirts from Ash and Anvil, now Ash and Erie? Let me know. Don't forget to tweet me. Real Zoe Hewitt is where you can find me, and we'll be back with more Shark Tank tips.